The call that changed everything. The sun had barely begun to rise over Palo Alto when Sundar opened his eyes. Soft light filtered through the curtains, painting gentle gold lines across the walls. The world outside was quiet, and for a moment it felt like peace. A rare moment in his life, where the world wasn't asking him for answers, where emails and meetings hadn't yet started demanding his time. The stillness was rare and precious. He moved quietly through his morning routine, the hum of the kettle. The only sound in the kitchen. His mind was already thinking about the day ahead, the product review, the investor call, the speech he had to write. Yet, even amid the usual storm, something felt off, like a shadow just outside his awareness. But he shook it off. Maybe it was nothing, just a tired mind playing tricks. He poured his tea, settled by the window, and reached for his phone. A missed call. Actually, 3. All from the same number. His heart paused. It was his cousin Rajiv. Back in Chennai, Sundar didn't hesitate. He dialed back immediately, pacing the room as the line rang. Rajiv picked up almost instantly, but there was a heaviness in his voice that Sundar had never heard before. Anna. He began slowly using the Tamil word for elder brother, even though they were cousins. I didn't want to tell you like this, but I had to. Sundar stopped pacing. He held the phone closer. The room around him fell silent. It's Uncle ... Yurappa. He collapsed yesterday. He's in the hospital now. Sundar's breath caught. For a few seconds, he didn't move. The sound of boiling water and chirping birds vanished behind the thud in his chest. How bad is it? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Rajiv hesitated. He hasn't woken up. Yet, there was a stillness deeper than silence that filled the room. Memories rushed into Sundar's mind. His father bent over the radio circuits, soldering wires with careful hands, explaining to a curious little boy how electrons moved. His quiet wisdom. His patience. His belief that someday Sundar could do something meaningful. What do the doctors say? Sundar asked, his voice unsteady. They said it's a stroke, a big one. There it was, the word. Short and sharp. A word that felt too small for the fear it carried. He might wake up in the next few days. Rajiv continued, but even if he does, they said it's not going to be the same. He may not remember much. He might not speak clearly. He might not walk. Sundar sat down slowly, placing the tea he hadn't touched on the table. He looked outside again, but the light didn't seem as warm anymore. Double quotes it. Is she okay? Rajiv sighed. She's holding on. But she's scared. She doesn't know what to do. The guilt hit him suddenly. It had been 8 months since he last visited Chennai. 8 months of meetings, deadlines, speeches, and global decisions. He had promised to go home last Diwali, but the conference in Zurich had come up. Then he promised New Year. Then budget season happened. He felt his throat tighten. I'll be there by tomorrow night. Rajiv exhaled in relief. Thank you, Anna. When the call ended, Sundar just sat there, phone still in his hand, his eyes fixed on the soft steam rising from the tea. The silence that had once felt peaceful now felt heavy, like a weight pressing against his chest. He thought of his father. The man who had walked for miles every day just to make sure Sundar had a proper education. The man who had never once bought anything for himself, but always made sure Sundar had enough books, enough notebooks, enough hope. How do you thank someone like that? How do you even begin to say goodbye if it's time? But he wasn't ready for goodbye. He stood up, called his assistant, and told her to cancel everything. No meetings, no interviews, no public statements. No press. Book me the first flight to Chennai, he said. Don't tell anyone why. Just say it's personal. She hesitated. Are you sure, Sundar? We have the quarterly. I'm sure, he interrupted. This is more important. Then he walked into his room, opened his closet, and began to pack. But something inside him felt different. This wasn't just a trip home. It was something else. Something deeper. He had never seen his father weak. Never. Not even once. He wasn't sure how to prepare for that. The flight was long. Too long. And no amount of comfort could soften the ache in his chest. He didn't eat. He barely slept. He kept thinking about what his mother might be going through. Alone in that hospital room, waiting for someone to say something hopeful. He imagined the beeping of machines, the sterile smell, the questions that no one could answer. When he finally landed in Chennai, the air hit him like a wall. Warm, thick, and heavy with memory. Every street they passed held something familiar. The old movie posters, the scooter horns, the rhythm of a life he had once known so well. A life he had left behind. When he walked into the hospital, everything slowed down. He saw his mother first. She was sitting on a small metal chair, her hands clutched around a handkerchief. She looked up when he entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she broke down. He went to her and held her tightly. She was so small in his arms, so light, as if worry had hollowed her out. She didn't say a word, and neither did because sometimes words are useless. Then he stepped into the room. His father was lying there, machines around him, tubes attached. His face looked tired, older, smaller than Sundar remembered. He walked slowly to the bed, sat down beside it, and reached out. He took his father's hand. It was warm, but still double quotes a PPA ... He whispered ... but there was no reply ... and then, just as Sundar was about to speak again, the heart monitor gave a strange beep ... A nurse rushed in. "What's happening?" Sundar asked, standing up quickly. The nurse didn't answer. She pressed a red button. Another nurse came running in. "Please step outside, sir." "No, wait, what's wrong?" His voice cracked. His mother stood behind him, now, crying. "What's happening?" she asked, terrified. The second nurse looked at her, then at Sundar, and said quietly, "He's crashing." And just like that, everything stopped. Asterisk memories in the silence of the hospital room felt colder than before. Not because the temperature had changed, but because something inside Sundar had. As the nurses rushed around the bed, pressing buttons, calling out instructions, moving quickly, but with alarming calmness, Sundar felt frozen in place. Everything blurred, the sound of machines, the flashing lights, the cries of his mother. Behind him, he didn't move. Couldn't. One nurse turned to him again. "Sir, please, step out." Her voice was gentle, but firm. Sundar looked at his father one last time before backing away. It felt like betrayal, walking out, like he was abandoning the man who had never once turned away from him. He followed his mother out of the room, but every step felt like it was sinking in wet cement. In the hallway, time slowed. He and his mother sat on a narrow bench just outside the room. She held a cloth bag on her lap, the kind she always carried to the market. She clutched it tightly now, as if inside it was something that could save her husband. Sundar didn't speak. Neither did she. After some time, a doctor walked out. He looked young, too young to carry news that could shatter a family. He came close, stood in front of them, and sighed. "We were able to stabilize him," he said. His heart stopped for 17 seconds. "We revived him. He's breathing again. But ... Sundar leaned forward. "But what?" "But he's in a deeper coma now," the doctor said, his voice low. "We don't know when or wake up." His mother gasped softly. Sundar reached out and held her hand. She squeezed it, hard, like a drowning person grabbing the last rope. "Can we see him?" Sundar asked. The doctor nodded. "He's unconscious, but you can sit with him, talk to him. Sometimes patients can hear us even when they can't respond. It might help." Inside, the machines continued their quiet, rhythmic work. His father lay there, face pale, skin loose. The strong, quiet man who had once fixed broken radios with calm fingers, who had taught Sundar how to build his first science project with scrap parts, now looked like a shadow of himself. Sundar sat by the bed. He leaned in close and whispered, "Appa, it's me. I'm here now." No response. He waited. Nothing changed. His mother stood near the door, wiping her eyes with the edge of her sari. She looked smaller now, like a part of her had faded in just a few hours. "He's not going to wake up, is he?" She asked quietly. Don't say that, Sundar replied, his voice firmer than he felt. She shook her head. He's tired, Sundar. He's worked his whole life, and now he's just tired. Sundar wanted to argue, wanted to say his father was strong, that he was a fighter. But deep down, a part of him knew she was right. Maybe not yet, maybe not now. But the clock was moving, and time was not on their side. Over the next few hours, relatives came and went. Some brought food, others just sat silently. The hallway was filled with soft prayers and quiet sobs. And Sundar, usually the one people turned to for decisions, found himself unsure, helpless. All the success, all the titles, all the interviews and headlines, none of it could change this. He stayed in the hospital that night. He refused to leave. His mother slept on a folding cot in a corner of the room. Sundar pulled a chair close to the bed and sat with his father. He talked, not because he expected an answer, but because he needed to believe his father could still hear him. Asterisk. He talked about childhood, about the time his father saved up for 6 months just to buy a new math textbook for him, about the rainy day they had no electricity, and his father built a light using a car battery so Sundar could study, about the night he got into IT and how his father cried quietly in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes so no one would see. You never said much, Appa, he whispered, but you gave everything. And I never said thank you properly. The machines kept their rhythm, steady, but silent. The next morning, Sundar woke to the sound of his phone buzzing. He had fallen asleep with his head resting on the side of the bed. The screen showed over 20 missed calls. Reporters, co-workers, one from the CEO of a major software company. But he ignored them all. Only one message stood out. It was from an unknown number. The message simply said, "Your father came to my house 20 years ago and changed my life. I thought you should know." Sundar frowned. He didn't recognize the number. He showed it to his mother. She looked at it, eyes narrowing slightly. "That's Vinod's number, I think. Your father's old student." I nodded. The name echoed in Sundar's memory. Faint, but familiar. A boy from a poor family, a few streets away. Sundar remembered his father helping him once, fixing his bicycle. He also remembered his father staying late at school, tutoring students who couldn't afford extra classes. Maybe Vinod was one of them. Without saying a word, Sundar stepped outside and called the number. A man picked up. "Hello?" His voice was quiet. "This is Sundar, Pichai," he said. "You sent me a message?" There was silence, then a soft laugh, like someone couldn't believe who they were talking to. "Yes, sir. I didn't think you'd call. I just ... I wanted to say something. Your father, he's the reason I became anything at all." "What do you mean?" "When I was 16, I failed my exams. My father was going to pull me out of school. I was ready to give up. Then one evening, your father showed up at our house. I don't know how he knew, but he sat down with my parents. He said I was smart. He said I just needed guidance. He promised to tutor me for free, and he did, every evening, for months. I passed because of him. I became an engineer because of him, and today I run my own company." Sundar didn't speak. His throat tightened. "Your father never talked about it. Never asked for anything, but he changed my life. I thought you should know that. He didn't just raise a son who became a world leader. He also lifted others along the way." The line went quiet. Sundar whispered, "Thank you." He hung up. For a long time, he just stood there, holding the phone, looking at the morning light pouring into the hallway, warm, soft, full of memory. He went back into the room, sat beside his father again. "I just heard about something you did." "Something I didn't even know. And it makes me wonder, how many more lives did you touch without ever telling anyone?" His father didn't respond. But Sundar imagined for just a second that he saw the faintest movement in his eyelid. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something later that day. Sundar made a quiet decision. He told his mother he was going to visit some people. She asked where. He didn't say, just smiled gently. He took an auto rickshaw and went to the neighborhood he grew up in, walked the streets, spoke to old neighbors, listened to stories. Stories about his father fixing school fans during summer so students wouldn't suffer in the heat. About how he used to buy notebooks for kids whose parents couldn't afford them. About how he once gave his only pair of shoes to a student who had to walk barefoot to school. Each story broke something open in Sundar's heart. Each one reminded him that greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Like his father had always been. By evening, he returned to the hospital. His mother was asleep again. The lights were dim. He sat beside the bed, leaned in close. Appa, I think I'm finally starting to understand who you really were. Not just my father, not just an engineer, but a quiet builder of dreams. He paused, looked at his father's still face. If you can hear me, I want you to know something. I'm going to do something in your name. Something that'll keep your kindness alive. For every life you touched, I'll help 10 more. I promise. He sat there quietly, letting the silence speak back to him. And then the heart monitor beeped again. A different sound this time, steady, but changing. Sundar stood up, heart racing. He called for the nurse. She came in, looked at the screen, then turned to Sundar slowly. His brain activity. It's increasing. Sundar stared at his father, not daring to hope too much. Are you saying? The nurse nodded slowly. He might be coming back. Asterisk when the eyes moved. The room was still. Not quiet in the way it had been before, not empty. And heavy like grief, but still in a different way. In the way people hold their breath without realizing it. The machines continued their quiet rhythm, and Sundar stood beside the bed, staring at the monitor, listening to the faster, sharper beeps that now filled the air like fragile hope. The nurse leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the knobs and reading the data. Her hands moved with precision, but her eyes held something new: curiosity. Even wonder. His brain activity is more responsive now, she said slowly, not looking away. This is the first sign of change in 2 days. Sundar blinked. His heart beat faster, so he's waking up. The nurse didn't answer immediately. It's too early to say for sure. But something is happening? Something real. He looked down at his father's face. It was still pale. His eyes remained closed, but Sundar noticed a subtle shift in his chest. His breathing seemed deeper, not as shallow. His fingers, once motionless, twitched slightly, as if trying to remember something forgotten. His mother stood behind him, silent. Her hands trembled. She leaned on Sundar's shoulder but didn't speak, just talked to him. The nurse whispered. Before leaving the room, so Sundar did. He pulled the chair close again and began to speak. Slowly, gently, like one might speak to a child waking from a deep, long dream. Appa, it's me, he said. Do you remember the time you taught me how to ride that old bicycle? The one with no brakes? I was terrified. But you said, don't worry. You'll fall a few times, but after that, you'll fly. He smiled faintly, eyes never leaving his father's face. I fell, remember? Scraped my knees. Cried like anything. But you never rushed over. You just stood at a distance and said, get up, try again. And I did. A tear rolled down Sundar's cheek. I think about that a lot now. How you always knew when to step in and when to let me fight for myself. He paused, then slowly, he saw it. His father's eyelids fluttered, barely a second. But enough. Sundar leaned in. Appa, can you hear me? His father's mouth didn't move. His body didn't shift. But the eyelids trembled again, a soft twitch, as if responding from a place far away, deep inside a fading dream. Amma, Sundar said quickly, turning to his mother. His eyes, they're moving. She came forward, her face lit with something between disbelief and prayer. They waited. A minute passed. Then another dot. Finally, his eyes opened. Just a sliver. Just enough to show the whites beneath the lids. His mother gasped and covered her mouth. Sundar reached for the call button. The doctor arrived within minutes. He checked the vitals, tested reflexes, asked questions even though he knew there would. Be no answers yet, but the look on his face had changed. The doubt was gone. He's coming out of it, he said, very slowly. But it's happening. His mother cried openly now, leaning against the wall. Sundar held her hand, gently guiding her to sit. But even as the moment filled with joy, Sundar felt something strange inside himself. Something heavy, because even in this miracle, there was a truth he couldn't ignore. His father's eyes didn't focus. They moved, but not with recognition. They searched, but found nothing. No spark, no clarity. The doctor turned to him. This is the beginning of a long process. He may not remember names. He may not speak clearly for weeks, months even, but the brain is working. And that's everything right now. Sundar nodded. But in his heart, he wasn't sure how to feel. In the days that followed, recovery moved like molasses, slow, sticky, uncertain. His father would blink when Sundar spoke. Once, he turned his head slightly toward his mother's voice. Another time, he squeezed Sundar's finger. Just once, but it was enough to bring everyone in the room to tears. Each movement felt like a mountain climbed. But with every inch of progress, new fears appeared. His father's memory was clouded. When they showed him a photo of the family, he stared at it blankly. When his mother called his name, he blinked, but didn't respond. And once, when Sundar gently asked, "Do you know who I am?" his father looked at him with soft, empty eyes, like a stranger. It broke something inside Sundar. The sharpest pain wasn't that his father had forgotten the world. It was that the world hadn't forgotten him, not Sundar. Not the people whose lives he had changed. Not the family who still needed him. But what do you do when the person you love most forgets who you are? Sundar found himself asking that question late into the night. When the hospital lights dimmed and the corridors emptied. When sleep refused to come. He would sit beside the bed, holding his father's hand, speaking quietly into the silence. "Okay, if you don't remember me, Appa, I remember you." Then one morning, something changed. The family had gathered in the room, his mother, his aunt, 2 cousins. Everyone was talking softly, sharing old stories, hoping the sound might stir something in a man who had been so quiet for so long. Sundar's cousin, a younger boy who had always admired Sundar's father, leaned over and said, "Uncle, do you remember the story of the broken radio? The one you fix using only a battery and a safety pin?" They all laughed, even Sundar. It was one of those legendary family stories. Sundar's father had fixed a dead transistor radio without a soldering iron. He had used nothing but a safety pin, a rubber band, and his imagination. And then the room went quiet because his father smiled, a slow, crooked smile. Not wide, not full, but unmistakable. Sundar's mother dropped the glass she was holding. It shattered on the floor. No one noticed. His father turned his head toward the sound. Then he looked at Sundar. Really looked. And for the first time since the stroke, there was something behind the eyes. Something familiar. Something ancient. His lips moved. No one could hear the words, but Sundar leaned in close. And then came the whisper. "You ... What? That was it. Just 5 words. Broken. Weak. But real. Sundar broke down. He grabbed his father's hand and kissed it, his tears soaking into the old man's dry skin. "Yes, Appa. I'm your boy. I'm here." His mother was crying too. Everyone was. The nurse at the door wiped her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. The doctor came in and nodded slowly. "The memory is returning," he said, piece by piece. But Sundar wasn't listening. He was too busy holding on. Because this was the moment. Not the global speeches, not the awards, not the titles. A whisper from a fading voice. A smile from a tired face. 5 words that reminded him who he really was. And in that moment, Sundar made another silent promise. This wasn't going to be the end of it. It was just the beginning. Because there was still something broken in the family. Something deeper than illness. A silence between people. Distance that had grown over the years. Unspoken words. Forgotten kindness. And now, with his father slowly coming back, Sundar saw a chance a chance to fix what had quietly fallen. A part to bring everyone together quietly like his father would have. Asterisk what we never say the days after his father spoke. Those 5 broken words. Everything began to change not quickly. Not in the dramatic way movies sometimes show it, but in small, fragile steps like a flower slowly turning toward the sun. Each morning, Sundar arrived early at the hospital. He would sit with his father, holding his hand, sometimes reading aloud from old books they both once loved. Stories of invention, of impossible problems solved by quiet minds. He wasn't sure how much his father understood, but every now and then, his eyes would follow the sound of Sundar's voice. And sometimes, if the story was familiar, he would smile. A weak, tired smile, but one filled with recognition. His mother had begun smiling too. Not much, but enough to remind Sundar of the strength she had carried alone for so long. She still brought his father's favorite blanket, still rubbed coconut oil on his forehead every morning, still whispered little prayers under her breath as she folded his shirts. These small acts became rituals. Pieces of life they were carefully putting back together. But while the room around his father's bed began to fill with hope, Sundar began to notice something else outside that room. In the hallway, in the waiting areas, in quiet corners of the house they all used to share, something was broken. And had been for years. At first, it was just small things. His aunt, who lived nearby, avoided eye contact with Sundar's mother. His cousin Rajiv spoke with polite words but cold eyes. His younger uncle barely visited the hospital at all. When he did come, he never stayed long. Once, Sundar overheard 2 relatives whispering in the kitchen. He never visited for 8 months, one of them said. And now suddenly, he wants to act like the perfect son. The words weren't meant for him, but they landed like stones. He didn't respond. He just stepped into the room, quiet as ever. But inside, something turned. Later that evening, after the visitors had left, Sundar sat with his mother outside on the hospital bench. The night air was heavy, and the streetlights flickered faintly above them. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, he said, "Why is everyone so distant, Emma?" She looked at him with tired eyes. "We're family, Sundar. But sometimes pain builds walls between people. Even the ones who love each other, what pain." She sighed, pulling the shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Your uncle always felt like Appa favored you? Not just because you did well, but because Appa spent more time guiding you than his own brother. Your cousins feel like you became too big for us. Like you forgot where you came from." Sundar stared ahead, his voice quiet. "But I didn't. I was just busy. I thought they understood." "You were busy building the world," she said gently. "But in the meantime, our little world cracked." He didn't reply, because she was right. In all the achievements, all the recognition, he had missed birthdays, missed weddings, missed deaths. One cousin lost his job Sundar never even knew. Another had a daughter born early. He didn't call, not because he didn't care, but because life had swallowed him whole. He hadn't just left the neighborhood. He had left the people in it behind. The next morning, Sundar made a decision. He called his assistant and canceled everything for the next week. No calls, no interviews, no public events. "This is personal," he told her. "Please handle it quietly." She agreed. He then began calling family members. One by one, inviting them to a quiet dinner at their old home. Not fancy, not formal. Just food, chairs, and time. The idea was simple. To gather not as relatives, but as people who had forgotten how to speak to each other. His mother was hesitant at first. "They may not come," she warned. "Some of them are still angry." "It's okay," Sundar replied. "I'll still go ahead, even if it's just you and me." On the evening of the dinner, Sundar helped prepare the house. He dusted the old photos on the wall, cleaned the windows, and even rolled out the worn mats in the backyard. He wanted it to feel familiar, not like a hotel room, not like a guest house, but like home. The food was simple. Sambar, rice, potato, curry, lemon rasam. Recipes his father used to love. And then People began to arrive. Slowly. First his aunt. Then Rajiv. Still unsure. Then more cousins. Some quiet, some curious. No one smiled at first. No one hugged. Just soft nods, tight shoulders, the kind of stiffness that only grows in people who used to be close but don't know how to be anymore. They sat around the table. Awkward silence hung like smoke. Then Sundar stood. He didn't clear his throat. Didn't raise his voice. Just spoke. I know I'd been distant, he began. I know I missed things. I can't change the past. But I want to be here now, not just for Appa, for all of you. No one spoke. So he continued. I've spent years solving problems, building things, but I didn't see the cracks forming. Right here at home, I didn't call enough. I didn't show up enough. I thought love didn't need reminders, but I was wrong. He looked around the table. Appa didn't raise me to walk away from people. He raised me to fix things, to quietly make what's broken whole again. I want to do that now. His voice didn't break, but his eyes did, and in that silence, something shifted. His aunt looked down, brushing her thumb across the edge of her plate. Rageev sighed, finally. But you're here now, and maybe that's something. They ate in silence at first. But then someone laughed. A cousin told a joke from childhood. Someone else shared an old memory about Sundar falling into a ditch on the way to school. Even his aunt, the one who never smiled, began sharing a story about Sundar's father rescuing a bird with a broken wing. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That night, after everyone left, Sundar sat alone in his old room. The posters on the wall were faded. His textbooks still lined the shelf. He touched the edge of the study table where his father once placed a small kerosene lamp so Sundar could read during power cuts. So much had changed, but the foundation remained. Family, kindness, memory. As he sat there, his phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Your father asked for you. Sundar stood immediately. His heart beat faster. He rushed to the hospital. When he walked into the room, his father was awake, sitting slightly upright, weak but aware. His eyes found Sundar. This time there was no confusion. Only love. His father reached out, his hand shaking. Sundar took it. His father's voice was barely a whisper, but it was clear. Did you fix it? Sundar leaned in, smiling softly. Not everything, he said. But I started. His father nodded. And for the first time since the stroke, tears rolled down his cheeks. Asterisk. The quiet repair the next morning began with soft light pouring into the hospital room. Golden and gentle, like the world outside had paused for a moment, waiting for something to begin. Sundar sat beside his father, holding a bowl of warm porridge. His father's hands were too shaky to hold a spoon, so Sundar fed him slowly and patiently. His father didn't say much. Just a few words here and there. Sometimes enough. Sometimes just thank you. His voice was still faint, like it had traveled a long way through the dark just to reach the edge of his lips. But Sundar didn't mind. Every word was a miracle. His mother stood by the window, folding fresh clothes. There was a calm in her eyes that hadn't been there before, like the storm inside her had passed, and now only soft rain remained. When the nurse entered the room, she smiled at Sundar and his father. We'll start speech therapy today, she said. Just small exercises. Maybe a few minutes. Sundar nodded. He turned to his father. Ready, Appa? His father gave a small, shaky nod. It was barely visible. But Sundar saw it, and that was enough. As the nurse guided them through the process, Sundar watched closely. His father struggled with basic sounds. Sometimes his mouth wouldn't move at all. Sometimes the sound came out wrong. But still, he tried. And every time he got a little closer, Sundar clapped quietly, like encouraging a child learning to speak for the first time. After the nurse left, his father looked at him, lips twitching into a faint smile. You. Patient, he said slowly. Sundar laughed softly. You used to be too. Now it's my turn. His father's smile widened slightly. Slow. Is okay. That sentence stayed in Sundar's mind long after the room fell quiet again. Got slow. is okay. Dot, he kept thinking about it. In airports, during walks around the hospital garden, in quiet elevator rides, in moments where the world seemed to demand he hurry, succeed, decide. He remembered those 3 words. He had spent so many years rushing, chasing, building, always thinking 2 steps ahead. But now, sitting beside his father, watching him learn how to say simple words again, he realized something important. Dot, real strength lives in stillness. Dot, in waiting. Dot, in presence. Dot, in presence. It wasn't just about being in the same room. It was about being available with your whole heart without thinking about the next thing. Dot, that week, Sundar stayed off the grid. No laptop, no phone during visiting hours. He took walks with his mother, cooked simple meals at home. He helped a young cousin with her school project. And every evening he sat beside his father, reading books, helping him speak again, listening to stories that he had never heard before, because something else had begun to happen. His father had started remembering. Dot, slowly. Dot, in broken sentences. Dot, in incomplete images. Dot, but real. Dot, one afternoon, as Sundar helped him drink water, his father whispered, "Remember. Dot, dot." "The kite?" Sundar frowned. "Which kite?" "Blue one," his father said. "Your birthday. I made it." Sundar blinked. Dot, he had forgotten. Dot, but now a picture began forming in his mind. The small rooftop of their house. The wind, his 7th birthday. A bright blue kite flying high in the sky. And his father standing behind him, helping him hold the spool, guiding his small hands with quiet patience. "You made that kite?" Sundar asked. Dot, his father nodded slowly. "From paper. Dot, dot. And glue. Nobody. Dot, dot. But you smiled. I remember." Sundar's eyes filled with tears. Dot, so much of his childhood had been shaped by quiet sacrifices. So many little acts of love he never even noticed. But now, in this room, with his father slowly stitching together the past, he was beginning to see the full picture, and it humbled him. One night, Sundar walked out of the hospital room to get some air. The corridors were dim, and the garden was empty. He sat on a wooden bench under a neem tree and looked up at the stars. A soft voice interrupted him. "You look tired, Anna." He turned. It was Rajiv. Sundar smiled. "Not tired. Just dot, dot." Thinking. Rajiv sat beside him. For a while, neither spoke. Dot, then Rajiv said, "I never said it before, but you're doing the right thing, staying here, helping Appa recover, bringing everyone together." Sundar looked at him. "I should have done it earlier." "Maybe," Rajiv said, "but maybe this is the only time it could have happened." They sat in silence again. Then Rajiv added, "You know, when my dad passed away, I thought of calling you. But I didn't. I was angry. I thought you wouldn't care." Sundar's voice was quiet. "I would have come." "I know," Rajiv said. "But I didn't give you the chance." Sundar turned to him, and then "Maybe now's our chance." They looked at each other. Dot, 2 men, raised under the same roof, shaped by the same family, separated by time and pride. Dot, and slowly, without any more words, they stood and embraced. Dot, it wasn't dramatic. Dot, just honest. Dot, and something in both of them began to heal. Dot, in the following days. Sundar did more than just visit the hospital. He started working quietly on something else. He reached out to his company's local team in Chennai, made a few calls, had quiet meetings with teachers and local leaders. No press, no cameras. Dot, he started designing a new program in his father's name. Dot, a simple idea. Free evening classes for students in underserved areas. 1 teacher for every 10 children. Subjects taught in Tamil and English. No exams. Just learning, guidance, support. Dot, he called it Appa Pathai. It meant father's path. He shared the idea with his mother first. She cried when she heard it. He would be proud. She whispered. Dot, then Sundar shared it with his father. The old man, still weak and unable to say much, simply held Sundar's hand and smiled. Weeks passed. His father could now walk a few steps with help. He could say short sentences. He could remember names again. One morning, as Sundar helped him shave, His father looked at him in the mirror and said, "You are a better man than me." Sundar shook his head. "No, Appa. I'm just trying to be like you." His father chuckled softly. "You already are." It was the kind of compliment that doesn't need more words. Later that day, Sundar received a message from his assistant. "You've been nominated for a Global Leadership Award. They want you to speak in New York next week." He stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, he typed back, "Thanked them. But I have a more important speech to give right here." He deleted the message before sending it. Then he walked back into the hospital room. Because his father was learning to write again. And today, for the first time, he wanted to try writing his own name. Asterisk, the last lesson morning his father wrote. His name again. Everything in Sundar's heart slowed down. Not because the handwriting was perfect. It wasn't. The letters were shaky, uneven, half-formed. The pen trembled in his father's hand. But the letters were there, each one carrying the weight of memory, survival, and love. Not just a name, but a statement. "I'm still here." His mother clapped her hands together softly. She didn't say a word, but her face was glowing. It was like watching someone find light after weeks of walking through fog. Sundar looked at the paper. The name was short. Just Venkat. His father's name, but it held the weight of generations. Not just one man, but everything he had stood for: humility, hard work, and the quiet strength that builds lives without asking for credit. Sundar held the paper in his hands. "I want to frame this," he said, smiling. His father chuckled. "Frame? Messy writing?" "No," Sundar said. "Frame the strength." Later that day, Sundar took a quiet walk through the neighborhood where he had grown up. The sun was warm, the streets full of sounds that once defined his childhood. Street vendors shouted prices. Children ran barefoot across the street, chasing an old football. The smell of fried snacks floated in the air. People recognized him, but they didn't shout or crowd. They just nodded, smiled, and whispered among themselves. One old woman came up to him, her eyes soft and worn. "Your appa helped my son pass his maths exam," she said. "I never got to thank him. He just did it quietly." Sundar smiled. "He wouldn't want thanks. Just that your son is doing well." She nodded. "He's a teacher now." He returned home, his mind quiet. There was a peace growing inside him now. Not because everything was perfect, but because he was finally present, grounded, open to the life around him. The next morning, Sundar took his father to a small community hall near the hospital. The doctors had said it would be good for him to be around familiar faces, sounds, and people. What Sundar hadn't told his father was that this wasn't a regular visit. Inside the hall were about 30 students. Some wore school uniforms. Others wore hand-me-down clothes. But all of them carried books in their hands. They were the first students of the program Sundar had started in his father's name. As they walked in, the children stood and greeted them. "Good morning, Uncle," they said in unison, voices full of hope. His father blinked, confused. "Who are they?" Sundar bent close to his ear. "They're your students. They just don't know it yet." A teacher stepped forward. "Sir, these are the children who will learn here every evening because of you." His father didn't speak, but his eyes filled with tears. His lips moved slowly. D in single quotes T do much. Sundar placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did enough for all of us. Now it's our turn." The children clapped, not loudly, just enough to fill the room with something soft and alive. His father was helped to a seat. In the front row. Then Sundar stood in front of the students. He looked around the room. The walls were plain. The lights flickered slightly. The fan spun unevenly. But the energy in the room was full. He spoke simply. "When I was your age, I studied by candlelight," he began. "I didn't have much, just a few books, and a father who believed in me." He paused, looking at his father, who was now watching him with the eyes of someone who had waited his whole life for this moment. He never asked for anything, never told anyone how many people he helped. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because that's who he was. Kind, quiet, strong. The students sat wide-eyed, listening. Asterisk, this school is for you. not just to learn math and science, but to learn how to be kind, how to be strong, how to help others, even when no one is watching. He looked down, gathering his thoughts. My father taught me the most important lesson of all leadership is not about being loud. It's about showing up when it matters. Even when no one sees it, his voice softened, and now he's still teaching me. When the speech ended, the children stood and clapped again. His father smiled, not at the crowd, but at Sundar. It was the smile of a man who had given everything he had and now, at the end of a long road, was seeing it all come back, not in riches, not in fame, but in people, thought, and impact. Asterisk.